Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. In this video, I'll be giving you guys my thoughts on Microsoft's unveiling of the Xbox Series S next-gen console, the younger brother to the Xbox Series X, and also talking about pricing since that's also been finally unveiled. I have already covered the Xbox Series X's reveal and have given my thoughts on it, so if you're interested in that, link for that video will be down below. So on the 9th of September, Microsoft had unveiled a new next-gen console, the Xbox Series S. This console will be their budget option for gamers who aren't looking to spend a whole lot of money for a new console, but still would like to attain a next-gen experience. It's been announced that the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X will hit the market at $299 and $499 respectively on November 10th, 2020. Very aggressive price points, which make the consoles quite attractive depending on which market segment you're in, but we'll talk more about pricing later on in the video. So before we get into the whole features and tech specs that the Series S has to offer, let's talk about the design of the consoles. Right off the bat, you'll notice that the Series S is significantly smaller than the Series S. We're talking about less than half the size. I think judging from the pictures, it's almost a third of the size when compared to the Xbox Series X. They actually even do state nearly 60%, so yeah, almost 2/3 smaller. I actually do like this design. It's very sleek looking, it's a minimalistic looking design where it's got a slim profile to it. But the design isn't anything too crazy with any weird angles or flashy colored accents, something that Sony opted for with their PlayStation 5 console. Now at the top of the Series S console, we can see that there's some sort of circular vent for airflow. I'm not sure why they didn't also just make the mesh white. With the black colored vent, it looks like there's this large gaping hole in the middle of the console, and to me it kind of looks out of place. It actually looks like someone could mistake it for a bookshelf speaker, but hey, if that's all it needs for cooling, then that's pretty impressive, and if it does the job, that's fine with me. But in regards to the overall size, it's going to be quite small, and I think for the folks who want a simple, minimalistic setup and want a low footprint console, they'll really appreciate that. To further put this into perspective, just how small the console is, they've got this blown up image of it with the case, fan, heatsink, and motherboard all apart. It practically looks like a mini ITX board with the case around it, or even maybe smaller, probably around the size of an STX motherboard. Similarly to last gen, like with the Xbox One S, which was a cheaper alternative to the original console, they're going to be following this robotic white theme, as they're calling it. Microsoft always seems to go for a white color theme every time they bring out some economical version of one of their flagship devices, so I guess it was only appropriate here. Let's move on to the features and tech specs for the Xbox Series S. Now, even though the Xbox Series S is supposed to be the budget/cut-down option when compared to the more expensive Xbox Series X, Microsoft still managed to bring over practically all the great next-gen features from the more expensive console, so in many ways you're not even compromising, which makes this console very good value. We'll get to specs in a moment, but with the Series X, Microsoft are targeting 4K 60fps performance for their games with up to 120fps capability for those really competitive games like Twitch shooters and less demanding games. With the Xbox Series S, you'll be able to get that same experience just at 1440p, which is still a lot better than 1080p. Take it from a guy who has been gaming at 1440p 144Hz for like the last 5 years, and also games at 1440p 120Hz on my TV for now. But don't worry, as I know there will be a lot of gamers out there looking to utilize their 4K TVs, and Microsoft do state that there will be a 4K upscaling option available, so that should help bump up those visuals in games to give you that near native experience. Definitely convenient. And also, don't worry, just because they're talking about 1440p gaming performance doesn't mean that, you can't stream video at 4K. You'll definitely be able to, log into your Netflix account or go on Plex and be able to stream 4K playback, as even the Xbox One S from the last generation was capable of that. Along with that, they'll be bringing over some of those same RDNA 2 features we saw with the Xbox Series X, such as DirectX ray tracing, which will be awesome for a console like this, and with more and more games coming out, and with huge titles like Cyberpunk that will support ray tracing, this will truly allow you to experience that next-gen tech and amplify your gaming experience for great value. In addition, they'll be able to leverage technology like variable rate shading. Now, variable rate shading is pretty cool because it essentially allows the system to manage its own resources more intelligently by only applying the full details and visual effects to areas where the user will notice it the most, and stuff that may be in the background or, far off in the distance or to the sides, not in direct view to the player where they won't notice it, will have less details shown on it. This should in theory provide a considerable boost in performance as the system will be able to use its resources more efficiently. The Xbox Series S will also be powered by Microsoft's new Velocity architecture, which will leverage their new custom PCI Express 4.0 NVMe SSD. That results in much faster loading times compared to the last gen, which used traditional mechanical drives. They've also mentioned how it will be capable of their new quick resume feature, where you can seamlessly hop in between games with minimal loading times and pick up exactly where you left off. This is actually a really great and convenient feature for those games that have a checkpoint-based system and don't allow you to save right where you left off. They further talked about the Xbox Series S's 120 FPS capabilities, about how much smoother it will be, how accurate your movements will feel. Well, I'm just sitting there like, okay, cool. PC gamers have been able to experience this since forever. Nonetheless, I'm glad consoles are finally on board with high refresh rate gaming, and for the price, 1440p 120 FPS sounds like an absolute steal. Oh, and as I was editing this video on Twitter, I saw Dolby announce that the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X are the first consoles ever with the support for gaming in Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos, which is very nice. I believe the Xbox One S and Xbox One X could already do Dolby Atmos, but I don't think they were compatible with Dolby Vision. So it's very nice. So for all you guys out there with high-end audio systems, with a Dolby Atmos capable receiver and Dolby Vision compatible TV, you're in for one breathtaking experience. When I watched my first movie with my Dolby Atmos receiver and Dolby Vision supported OLED TV, I was blown away, man. Next up, I want to go over some of the specs and compare them with the Xbox Series X, and it'll tell us just how good the price of performance for the Series S will be. Starting with the CPU, the configuration here is almost the same with two minor differences. Both consoles will use an 8-core AMD Zen 2 CPU, except the Series S will be clocked 200 MHz lower, whether that's with or without SMT enabled. Now, that's actually surprising to see because at the price point of the Series S, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck, and this is a huge improvement over the previous gen consoles, which were using those old Jaguar cores based on AMD's horrendous bulldozer architecture that caused major bottlenecks for the previous gen systems. But now with either the Series X or Series S, you're getting a CPU that's in many ways is comparable to the desktop CPUs. Obviously, there are other major differences like cache, latency, and all that, but for gaming, the leap in CPU power will be greatly beneficial. Also, those clock speeds are really nothing to be concerned about, as for the most part, performance targets they're going to be going for, the consoles shouldn't have any issues there, as most of the work will be done by the GPU anyway. Now, for the GPU, here's where you get the biggest difference between the two consoles. Where for the Series X, we had a 52 compute unit GPU clocked at 1825 MHz, whereas for the Series S, we're looking at a severely cut down 20 compute unit GPU, which will run at 1565 MHz. So, what that translates to in terms of theoretical GPU power is that the Series S will be about 3 times less powerful than the Series X. Now, I know that sounds like a huge compromise, but you have to remember that this is AMD's brand new RDNA 2 architecture. Teraflops can't be directly compared between different generation GPUs, as with these new GPUs, you'll be getting a lot more performance per teraflop. I mean, if you look at the Xbox One X, which had 6 teraflops of performance, that obviously sounds like it's more, but we know full well that it's not a system capable of 1440p 120 FPS. That's because the consoles were using an older GPU architecture, GCN, which I think was Polaris-based. And they even state that it's 3 times the performance of the original Xbox One. Doesn't matter, as they seem to be quite confident that even with this cut-down GPU, they'll be able to hit their 1440p target. Will every game run at 120 FPS? Probably not, but at the very least, it'll be 60 FPS, which is good. Moving on, we know they'll be using a custom 7nm enhanced node, aka TSMC, as wherever AMD goes, Microsoft will essentially be using the same tech. Now, in terms of RAM, we've got 10 GB of GDDR6 versus 16 gigs of GDDR6 on the Series X, and it's also quite a bit slower too. Now, they're going to be doing the same mixed speed configuration here, where 8 gigs will run at 224 GB per second, and 2 gigs will run at a slower 56 GB per second rate. That is a significant reduction in regards to the memory, both speed and capacity-wise, but I guess they had to cut costs somewhere. Also, speaking of cutting costs, we're looking at half the PCIe Gen 4 NVMe storage capacity, 512 GB versus a terabyte, but at least the speeds are the same. Now, with a capacity of 512 gigabytes, that is very low. I already said that the 1 terabyte capacity for the Series X was already low as well, but at 512 gigabytes, don't expect to load a lot of games on that drive, and expect to look into expandable storage options like Microsoft's Seagate expansion cards. Gears 5 was probably around 100 gigs. Modern Warfare at one point reached over 200 gigabytes, and games like Forza Horizon 4 reach around 80 gigabytes. So if you were to install just 4 of those titles, you're practically already out of storage, man. And it'll be quite the hassle when you're going to have to keep transferring them on and off USB storage. In terms of backwards compatibility, both consoles will have the same capability, going all the way back to the original Xbox. I'm just going to add one more thing as a side note here. If Microsoft can please port some of their original Xbox titles to Windows, like Midtown Madness 3 or Crimson Skies, I will be absolutely ecstatic. Anyways, this is smart because, as I just mentioned, there's a lot of great classic games on the older consoles, and I'm sure, everyone would like to revisit them every now and then. So to have the capability to do that is great, man, and Microsoft is a huge step ahead of Sony in that regard. The Series S will have no disk drive. I mean, that's part of the whole point of this cut-down console, but with digital distribution becoming so common now, I doubt it's a huge deal anyway. I'm sure those of you shopping for the budget consoles expect it as much anyway. Just make sure you got a decent internet connection. HDMI 2.1, was a given that with them mentioning 120 FPS capabilities at 4K, they had to implement this port. If they didn't, they weren't going to be able to reach those performance targets for gamers. So this port should be capable of hitting those specifications and, letting gamers take advantage of that. And as I mentioned at the start, the Series X and Series S will be $499 USD and $299 USD respectively. At those price points, Microsoft is almost guaranteed to be losing money on these consoles, because that is indeed very aggressive. Great for consumers though, and you'd struggle to build a comparable gaming PC with similar specs to the Series S for $299, when a Ryzen 7 3700X alone would cost you that much. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole console versus PC debate in this video. All I will say is that, hey man, if you're looking for a fantastic next-gen gaming experience, you want a system that will allow you to play some famous Twitch shooters at high frame rates, with awesome new visual tech like ray tracing, with fast SSD storage capabilities, at $299, the Series S is one hell of a deal. Another thing that I want to mention was that, at $299 and even $499 for the flagship console, like at these aggressive price points, Microsoft may even, sway a lot of potential PC gamers to getting these consoles, because like I said in one of my previous videos where I ranted about how NVIDIA and AMD have destroyed the budget and entry-level market, it's getting really tough for gamers to build a, $500 computer, $600 computer, or, even $400 computer and get a generational leap of performance. As we know, in the upcoming months, NVIDIA will probably announce an RTX 3060, probably for around the same price at, $350, which, is not a mainstream GPU. I don't consider $350 mainstream. I consider, $150 to $200 the entry level for, those budget gamers looking to build, a $400 or $500 console. But, only graphics cards out in the market like the 5500 XT or RX 580, which, all perform around the same ballpark. And you want to build a computer that, has 8 cores, that can deliver 1440p, 120 FPS gaming at the very least. It's extremely difficult to do that, man. So at $299, this is actually a really, really good deal. And I think, potentially they've got a really good chance of swaying over a lot of those budget gamers, budget PC gamers, that is, into actually trying out these consoles. I know, if I was in those shoes, I'd be highly considering it. And it'll be interesting to see how Sony responds to this, because we know they've got the PlayStation 5 and PS5 digital version, but no prices have been announced yet. And I don't think they'll be able to price those consoles as aggressively as Microsoft did. It'll be entertaining to see how that plays out. Ball is in your court, Sony. Circling back to the price of the Series S and Series X for that matter, I think they're priced quite fairly, because you're seriously getting a lot for your money here. I even said this back when the Series X was announced, that even if it was $599, which is $100 more than what they just announced, that to me would have still been a fair price. But, Microsoft decided to take it one step beyond. And just like how NVIDIA wowed everyone with the RTX 3000 series, These next-gen consoles are significantly faster, miles ahead of the previous generation. It's going to be a pretty big leap. So overall, 2020, apart from all the other horrendous stuff that's happened, has been a pretty good year in regards to the tech industry. And there's still more to come, so I look forward to it. I hope you guys found this video to be informative and helpful. Let me know your thoughts down below. Check out the video description on ways to support the channel and for my other videos. If you guys are interested in more content like this, then make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.